What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Finger WAG podcast. My name is Gideon Hurst. I'm your host and solo podder for today. Week off for Georgetown this week before they take on Wagner on Saturday. Obviously, coming off of the big Clemson win. We had the episode with Jake Foote talking about that Clemson win. We wanted to make sure that we got a pod in before the weekend, particularly with all of the news that's breaking this week. I will also just flag a couple of housekeeping things in addition to going through the news that dropped about Vince. And then I want to take a look at, 4 games in, what are the Hoyas? Are they as good as they seem? There's a lot there that we've talked about on a couple of different pods, and we have a story up on the site right now, which I think I wanted to dive into a little bit as well. So just a quick solo pod, but one that hopefully gives you a lot of information and gets you ready for the weekend, and then ultimately over the Thanksgiving holiday, the tournament in Orlando, where Georgetown will take on at least Dayton and one of Miami and BYU. Couple of just housekeeping things first. I am going to be out and traveling next week over the holiday, so just a flag to expect less pod coverage specifically. Even if the multi-team event will have as much coverage as we can, we'll certainly have coverage back after that week, but I will be traveling. I know a lot of you probably will be as well. So hopefully we'll have enough content for you to get you, to tide you over and to make travels a little bit easier. Do have a couple of things planned for the tournament, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have some boots on the ground in Orlando to give us a little bit of perspective from the tournament. That'll be cool. I'm not sure that we'll have a podcast, but we will have social coverage. So make sure that you're following us on Instagram, our new Instagram, and Twitter or X. And then we'll be back as usual in full force for the UMBC game and then the big final, the non-conference big finale. There's a couple more non-conference games after this, but obviously the UNC game in the first Sunday of December. I believe it's the first Sunday of December. Anyway, just a couple of housekeeping things, and wanted to get you all a pod before I am out and looking at the team as a whole. But we have to start with the big news out of the Hilltop, and that is news announced that Vince Iwuchukwu will have a procedure and is expected to be out 6 to 8 weeks. The official announcement that came from Georgetown, I'll just read it here. Senior center Vince Iwuchukwu will undergo a scheduled medical procedure. He is generally in good health and will take a brief recovery period with a follow-up evaluation expected within 6 to 8 weeks. He will return once he is cleared at the evaluation. He is in good spirits and appreciates the support. Like, really tough news for everyone involved, but I want to start with the toughest news, which is for Vince. For those of you who don't know, and I really recommend that you go back and look at the story. I'll put it in the show notes here. Really great story out of the LA Times from Vince's time at USC, where he had a cardiac arrest or a cardiac incident during a practice, actually had his heart shocked and came back from that. This actually happened the summer before Bronny James also had a cardiac incident. If folks remember back to Bronny James' season at USC during the summer, they had that incident, and a lot of people credited the fact that the staff there dealt with this with Vince the year before for just how prepared they were. But the details of that story and event are frankly just incredible, that Vince made it back onto the court and several years later has really started to pop and to find his footing. I think we noted on the last pod how excited he was and how excited the students were for him. There's that enduring image of Vince jumping around with the students, which is just an incredible moment. I noted that on that last shot that he made that really put the game away, and Ed Cooley noted this as well, Vince running back down the court looked like he could barely contain his excitement. He was as excited as I think I can remember seeing a player after a shot like that. And it was just so cool to see, because he's put in so much hard work just to get to this point and start to really, really figure it out. The details, though, of that story, again, I really recommend you go read the LA Times piece, because it is a testament to the USC staff. It's a testament to Vince, frankly, and his family. Just a couple of details from that. He had the incident in a July summer practice. He started feeling, he been feeling faint and kind of weak going into the practice, wasn't looking right. There's a lot of detail about how the coaches recognized something was up, how he sort of recognized something was up. And then all of a sudden, this incident happened, and the training staff, the coaching staff, his teammates all needing to kind of spring into action and take some really drastic measures to make sure that to keep Vince alive, frankly. And it's an incredible story, an incredible piece that kind of walks through it. The doctor, I think, after that incident, according to the LA Times piece, told Vince and his family that he'd probably never play basketball again because the risk to his heart was so great. That ended up not being the case. He started slowly getting back into playing shape. He was finding his footing again. And over the remaining summer months and into the fall, he started getting his feet underneath him. By Thanksgiving weekend, he was able to dribble and shoot. By mid-December, he was running the court. Initial incident in July. And by December, he was back running, dunking, taking part in full workouts, which is just incredible, with trainers closely monitoring his heart. He was finally cleared for action, fully cleared during the Christmas break. And, he then, so gets cleared and then has to undergo the process of, now that he's cleared, to get back to Division I high major playing shape. And he played out the season at USC. There's details of what he went through there. He obviously transferred to St. John's, where he had some good moments, but didn't really break through for Rick Pitino, and then comes into Georgetown. Again, with all of this behind him, I'm sure it weighs heavily on his family. I'm sure it's just remarkable that he's able to put that behind him and really go out and just play hard. And he was really starting to figure it out. I mean, I think this was clear and evident based off of some of the conversation that we've had, obviously, after the Clemson game. He was a huge factor in that. Some numbers that Jake put up on Twitter that I think are sort of just indicate how he's been able to impact the game. Per 40 minutes, he was 22 points per 40 minutes, 8 rebounds, 4 blocks, attempting 15 free throws per 40 minutes. His ability to get to the line and knock down free throws has been great. And really his defensive ability to switch 1 through 5 to give them some rim protection, all of that was really coming into form. And actually, I thought he was forming a really nice kind of partnership and give and take with Julius, and the dynamic ability that the Georgetown was able to get to with either one on the floor, I thought was difficult for teams, and certainly had an impact. Vince posted an 8.5 box plus minus. And for those who don't know, box plus minus is just one of those catch-all stats that evaluates or tries to quantify the amount of impact a player has while he's on the floor based off of everything across the box score. So his 8.5 box plus minus was second to only KJ. So he was, in some metrics, only, as impactful as anybody on the team except for KJ, which should tell you something. And just really looked like he was finding his stride, started to really find and settle in offensively in that Clemson game. And this is a huge blow, obviously, to the program, but it's, I think Hoya Nation has said it across the socials, but it's important to just point out how tough this is for Vince and his family and how much we support and feel for him. I will say there have been some rumors circulating about something like this, nothing really clear or formal. And so when this came out, it wasn't the most surprising thing in the world, but it is a huge blow. And it's frankly just all of our thoughts go out to Vince in this time. And I will say, I think, I take Georgetown at their word. I don't have any inside information here, but just reading the tea leaves of the statement that they put out, it seems like this was not an emergency procedure. And I think, that's good, frankly. Obviously, I think the language of a scheduled medical procedure indicates that this is not an emergency. This was something that they maybe had even planned for, maybe found the time to do it at this point in time, knowing that he would need something like this. I don't know. But that he continues to be in generally good health, I think that's important as well. That indicates to me that there's probably not an emergent issue, but, with a heart issue, and he had an ICD device implanted in his chest after the incident at USC, a device that needs to monitor the rhythm of the heart and determine if a shock back to a normal rhythm is necessary. I mean, that's obviously serious. Not a lot of people play high-level basketball with that, obviously. Jeff Green comes to mind as a guy who has dealt with something like this, and I certainly would expect or hope that the Georgetown family makes that connection and puts Vince in touch with Jeff if he hasn't been already. But it's a serious situation, though not emergent, which I think is good. The follow-up evaluation expected within 6 to 8 weeks. No clue what the actual timeline for recovery is and what the actual procedure is, any of that. But it does seem like 6 to 8 weeks puts you kind of right around the start of the conference schedule. So you'd expect him to miss the rest of the non-conference schedule and potentially be back for, let's see, around, I think I've been hearing the St. John's game, which is at the end of the year, December 31st. So that would be a really, really optimistic timeline, maybe early January, or even if he misses through middle of January, you've got most of the conference season back. And I think, that's encouraging, obviously, with the news, and hopefully Vince can come back and be as strong as he was getting to this year. I certainly would expect that it's going to take him some time to get not only back into, cleared, but also back into shape to play at the high level that he was getting to. So just a really, really tough news for Vince. And I think for folks who have been online and have seen it, I think it's important to point out just how supportive the Georgetown Hoya nation and family has been of Vince and all of the well wishes that have been sent. I think, the note from athletics said he's in good spirits and appreciates the support. I know that students have sent some support as well. And I think, as we continue to go, we'll look for opportunities to support Vince and his family as not just a basketball player, but as part of the Hoya family. And we're all pulling for Vince and hoping for a quick, speedy, and healthy recovery first, and then get him back to basketball and dominating the way that he was. Have some more moments like the end of that Clemson game, which was just so cool. So all the best to Vince. It's a tough story, but one that hopefully he can come back from, and he's shown how resilient he is already to this point. There's nothing left to prove there. So if anybody can do it, it's certainly Vince. Obviously, this has implications for the team as well. One of the things we saw is just how dominant, frankly, Georgetown has been with one of their bigs on the court. So when they've gone with either Vince or Julius, they have been really, really good. And obviously part of that is of course, Vince, who has been fantastic, but Julius has been good in his own right as well. And he's going to need to step up, obviously. He's going to be taking on bigger minutes with Vince out. And really the biggest question is, can he stay on the floor? And obviously fouled out of the Clemson game and ran up fouls in the Maryland game as well. Just looking at sort of his the preseason games and the Clemson Maryland games, there's a big difference in how he was able to stay on the court there. In the GW Kentucky games, Julius fouled 3 times in 38 minutes. That's great. In versus Maryland and Clemson, it was 10 times in 25 minutes. That's bad. This, of course, comes from our own Jake Foote. I put this out on social, on Twitter. We need Julius to replicate the scrimmages. He's going to have to give you 25 minutes per game without fouling out, which is more than he has been playing so far. He's been averaging just under 15, I think around 13. That's going to need to go up and go up substantially because you're losing the luxury of rolling Vince out there. Now, his minutes, I think, are not only the low minutes of 13 minutes per game are not only because of fouls, it's also because of how effective Vince has been. And frankly, Vince has gotten the nod to close games, which increases his minutes. Vince so far is at 21 minutes per game. So I think I would expect there to be some natural increase in those minutes without really being a huge issue for Julius, because he's going to get more opportunities. They're going to want to play him more and need to play him more. So that's going to go up, but it needs to be around that 25 minutes a game, 20 to 25 minutes, seriously, for them to be able to really withstand this, particularly in some tough non-conference games against Dayton, whoever else they play in Orlando and then North Carolina. All of those are going to be without Vince, and the center depth is really, really strained. So good news is Julius has looked good when he's been on the floor, both offensively and defensively. He actually has a better defensive rating than Vince does, or the team has a better defensive rating with Julius on the floor than with Vince. I think he's been surprisingly very, very good defensively. He has looked like he's able to move a little bit better. He's had some great recovery blocks. He's been good in the pick and roll and better gardening in space. So the numbers suggest that, yeah, if he can stay on the floor, there's a lot to like out of Julius. I think we've seen how the offense runs with him on the floor. It's really just a question of, can he stay out there? And then in the minutes that he's going to have to rest, or if he is in foul trouble, you're going to see, I think, a lot of things. And I wonder how much Cooley's going to try and push a couple of these against Wagner ahead of the multi-team event in Orlando. You're going to see some Seal minutes for sure. He's obviously the depth center. He has played just under 6 minutes per game so far, and that's a lot in the cupcake matchups, though he did get a few minutes against Clemson when both Vince and Julius were in foul trouble. I think what you're going to see going forward is kind of the approach that Cooley took in the Clemson game, just spread across multiple games. He tried to go small at times, and probably first tried to go small. So DHS and Jake Foote are the two guys who I think he has wanted to play as kind of the small ball five. Jake Foote has, I think, the size certainly to do that, the athleticism to do that. It's a question of, can he get comfortable in that role? And maybe it comes along when he's focused solely on that role, as opposed to switching between a wing, even, sometimes playing even on the wing, a power forward position alongside a big, versus playing the small ball big. That's a lot to ask of a guy who is still, 5 or 6 games into his college career. So I'm optimistic that Jaden can get more comfortable there if he's allowed to sort of focus on that role, but he's not going to be the only solution. You've seen Deshaun play with Isaiah and Caleb and really just kind of platoon the bigs and play with a squad at the, in the front court of guys switching between themselves. Caleb, we noted, really battled against Davidson for Clemson, who is a big 5th-year guy. And Caleb, I thought, did really, really well from a strength standpoint in that matchup, and got some help from obviously the big block from Isaiah Abraham on the weak side. I think it's going to have to look like that for a little bit, particularly when they play small. Guys stepping up and just making plays. Good news is you've got the guards to put pressure and to stop penetration, because the rim protection is going to take a hit, because Vince was so long, so athletic, and really deterred guys from even getting in there. So you'll see the platoon, and then I think you'll see some minutes with Seal. And I would guess we see a good amount of Seal minutes against Wagner on Saturday, just to see, can they even try a straight up rotation with Seal and Julius? I think it's a lot to ask of both of those guys, but I think you're going to Seal minutes. And we've noted, I think Seal, when he gets comfortable, he does a lot of really good things. He's still, again, early in his college career, needs to figure out some of the movement and quick thinking of the game, but he battles, he'll rebound, he'll give you some fouls maybe. I think it's important to see what he has. The problem is you don't have a lot of games to really get him game reps ahead of the Orlando tournament. So I think you're going to see him potentially quite a bit against Wagner, but we'll see. I think they have the pieces to withstand this Vince withstand Vince being out, but it's going to be a challenge, and really the best version of this team definitely included Vince, and hopefully will include Vince when he comes back, and they can sort of tread water and stay competitive. I think they can hit the ground running again in the conference schedule. Really makes this Dayton game, I think, even more important, because the likelihood of you beating a BYU or UNC without Vince is not zero, but it certainly goes down. And so to get to that mark that we've talked about in the non-conference. I think beating Dayton is really, really important. Getting a shot at a BYU who's probably going to beat Miami, though you never know, that's house money at that point. And you can take your best shot and then take your best shot at UNC and feel pretty good about your non-conference schedule, that you won the games that you needed to win to put together a really, really good resume, and maybe you get a chance at one of the games that you would expect to not. Diving back into some of the numbers and really just how impressive this team has been for 4 games in. And there's been a lot of talk about the KenPom rankings, and I thought Jake did a really nice job on our last pod talking us through what's going on there, that, KenPom needs a month or two to really bake out the preseason stuff. They also are taking into account the end of games with Morgan State and Binghamton, where they sort of closed the gap and you didn't beat them by a whole lot. There are no bad wins when it comes to the tournament. So when the selection committee is looking at your resume, I don't think you're going to get hurt by bad wins. And I don't know that you could even call the Morgan State or Binghamton games as bad wins. Maybe Binghamton, because that's a 13-point win. There are no bad wins for the tournament, but there are bad wins for these metrics, and places like KenPom are going to dock you because of your inability to beat Binghamton by margin and underperforming their expectations. That's really what I mean by a bad win, is you've underperformed the expectation going into that. At the end of the day, for the tournament selection committee, they're looking at bad losses. That's the primary thing. And who did you beat and where? And so far, Georgetown has beaten everybody that they should, including 2 high major opponents, one on the road at Maryland and a Clemson team that I think should be a tournament team, though we'll see how they come together. So this team is in good shape. They are sitting at now 67th in KenPom. I'm not going to make the joke because I don't get it. I am an old and I will stand by it. But they sit 67th in KenPom. Their offense ranks 80th in the country. Their defense ranks 57th. I expect those to normalize a little bit. I think the defense is going to continue to rise, though certainly the Vince absence calls that into question a little bit, but I feel pretty confident that they can be a top 40 defense pretty easily. I think the question is, can they be a top 50 or top 60 offense? If they are a top 50 offense and a top 40, 30 defense, this is a really, really good team, and they've been trending in that direction. Hopefully they can get there. One of the things that I think really stands out about this team, Jake noted this in his analysis that he posted on Twitter that we wrote up for the site, is the backcourt is starting to really pop. It is a high-level backcourt in the Big East, and it's potentially a pretty elite backcourt in the country. And KJ and Malik have both taken steps forward and done maybe even more than we would have expected going in. So with KJ, his true shooting percentage is up 8% from last year. He's more efficient. That's a significant amount. His free throw rate is up 18%. He's getting to the line more effectively. His rebound rate is up 2%. He was always a pretty good rebounder from the guard spot, but particularly on this team, he needs to be a good rebounder, as we've noted that they really rely on gang rebounding, and he's part of that. Steal rate, which was one of his best attributes at Arizona. We've seen it here, but it's up 2%. All of this coming with a usage rate, so how much he's being used on the offensive end, up 4%. So he is getting more opportunities and being more efficient with those opportunities, getting to the line more and shooting it better. I've been encouraged by a couple of the threes he's made as well. Not sure what he's shooting on the year. I don't have that in front of me, but it's not he's taking 1 or 2 a game and is making 1 or 2. I think he's making 1 so far a game. And those are big shots. We noted sort of his big shot he had against Clemson in the first half. That was a big 3. When he's stepping into that shot, I have a little bit more confidence that it's going to go in. Maybe that continues to progress. Jake noted that he's really starting to shine in the mid-range, which is a place where we started to see it kind of pop with Micah before he got really efficient from basically everywhere on the floor. I'm not saying that, KJ is all of a sudden going to be a 40% free 3-point shooter down the stretch, but It's encouraging to see him put those shots together. He doesn't take a lot of them, but when he takes them, they're good shots and they're going in. The turnover rate is really key to me, and it's key across the team. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but his turnover rate has dropped from 17% last year to 8%. That's not a minor improvement. That's a genuinely fundamental shift in how he's playing the game and how effectively he's doing it. He's, with that usage rate also going up. So he has the ball in his hand more and he's turning it over less. That, I think, is about comfort. That's about understanding of this team. That's about his feel for the game and the feel for his teammates. He has a MIA BPR, which is a kind of another catch-all metric. Jake noted that this is his favorite catch-all metric. It's mine as well. I think it's a good way to look at the overall player. He's got a 6.34 BPR, which those are just numbers. What does that mean? It means he's playing at an all Big East level. It means he is at the level of impact that guys like Devin Carter and RJ Lewis last year was at. These are two guys who have won the last two Big East Player of the Year. Now there's guys in the Big East who are playing at even slightly higher levels, so I'm not sure that we can take that step yet, but he is at a all Big East level. He's averaging 19 points per game on 50% shooting and 33% three-point shooting, which is great. Improved rebounding, improved playmaking. This is an all-conference type player. This is a potentially all-conference first-team type player, and is just really cool to see him figuring it out, and is one part of this backcourt becoming legitimately one of the elite backcourts in the country. The other piece of that, obviously, is Malik Mack, and we've talked a lot about Malik on this podcast. Jake called it early that he thinks Malik was going to make a jump, and he has. It's just so clear if you watch him. The eye test tells you that Malik is bigger, faster, stronger, and better than he was last year. He is more comfortable. He's making shots more effectively. Across the board, almost everything that he's done is up from last year. His true shooting percentage is up. His free throw rate up. His assist rate, which was something that he did at Harvard. Jake has mentioned this a lot. He did at Harvard, didn't do as much last year, is up. He's averaging 3.5 assists per game. He's a score first guard, so you're not expecting him to be in the 6 to 8 assists per game range, but 3 to 4 to 5 is really, really solid. His rebound rate is up to 4 rebounds per game, and he's had some big ones. Part of this is just he's stronger. His athleticism has popped. We noted the rebound he had against Clemson, the last game against Clemson, where he just went up and got the ball above everybody. For 6'2" guy to go do that is, telling. Like KJ, his turnover rate is down 12% from 16% last year. That's huge. And part of what is, I think, really, really noteworthy to me, we talked about the discipline that this team has shown and how clean they've been with the basketball. And KJ and Malik are at the forefront of that. So Mac, as I said, 12% turnover rate down from 16%. KJ, 8% turnover rate down from 17%. Those are significant, notable drops that you would expect to be somewhat sustainable because of how they played so far. We've talked about this a lot, but the number for Caleb, 1 turnover in 110 or 112 minutes. He's got 1 turnover on the year. That's just remarkable for a guy whose usage has gone up. He's not just standing in the corner. He's taking the ball off the dribble, making really good decisions. Vince, 2 turnovers in 85 minutes. Julius, 0 turnovers in 52 minutes. Those are your 2 bigs who are handling the ball a lot and having offense kind of generate around them or through them. That's really, really big. And Isaiah, the sort of 5th starter there, 1 turnover in 63 minutes. So the turnovers we noted on the last pod, they are 7th in the country in their turnover rate right now. They just are playing clean basketball, and it is paying off. And Mac and KJ obviously are the leaders of that with the ball in their hand most. But, I'll just leave it with how Mac and KJ are able to play together. They're averaging nearly 34 points a game. That's high-level backcourt production. And the way that they play off of each other is just really starting to pop. I noted that that play against Clemson, the little give and go with between KJ and Mac getting the finish and one. That was a huge bucket in the flow of the game. It gave Georgetown a little bit of cushion. And between the two of them, it just looked like they'd been playing together for years and knew exactly what was coming and knew exactly what they wanted to do. And then Mac going and getting it done. So I think one of the biggest drivers so far of why you should feel so hyped about the Hoyas, the backcourt is all that and more. Another reason you should feel hyped about the Hoyas is Caleb Williams, frankly. We talked about what he needed to be this year, and he has been that star in his role. He's been like pretty close to perfect. As we've said, 1 turnover in 110 minutes. He's not going to be perfect all year. He's going to make mistakes, but the ability to play to do things that are asked of him in a lot of different environments. Against Clemson, he was asked to guard up again and really battle. Against Maryland, he was asked to do pretty much a little bit of everything. He had a couple of big baskets there, but his ability to create for himself and others on the offensive end has been something that this team just desperately needs. He's averaging 10.5 points per game, shooting 50% from the field, 33% overall from three. I think the threes are probably going to go up, frankly. He's just shown that he's too good of a shooter. And, he's shooting at a really high volume. So I expect him to be, up over 35% this year. But so far, he's knocking down the open ones and the big ones. He had a couple of huge ones in Clemson, including the first bucket of the game, which we didn't talk a lot about this, but it's a sneaky important bucket because you'd come off that Binghamton game where Georgetown was didn't start the game strong, had trouble getting into it. And that first play right off the bat, a really, really nice read from Julius, swings it to Caleb on the wing for an open three, and he knocks it down. A huge bucket, and he's just done that all year. Rebounding, obviously big. He's just under 5 rebounds per game, and then that turnover mark. He's been absolutely great. They're going to need him to be even bigger. They're going to ask him to do things that are going to be even harder, including guarding centers at times, but he's shown basically that he can do whatever you ask of him and excel at it. And it's really, really remarkable to see. I want to touch on kind of the fifth man here because we've talked about sort of what does the rotation look like so far. And I think we were all a little bit surprised to see Isaiah as kind of the first option for the starting lineup, but I think it's worked out really, really well. All of these guys all 3 of the guys who are sort of in contention for that fifth man role have played well at times and have had some struggles, but for the most part, they are all contributing to wins. Isaiah, Jeremiah Williams, and Deshaun Harris-Smith. Jeremiah, I think, had a tough one against Clemson, but has largely played really well. He hasn't scored the ball a lot. He's averaging just under 4 points per game, which is the lowest among the 3 of them. I think he's just not been looking for his shot much. And I think as you continue to progress through the year and he does what you need him to do on a given night or a given day. And at times there's going to be some days where what you need him to do is score. And I think he can do that. But I've just been really impressed with his ability to run the offense effectively, to calm them down, to get them into stuff on the offensive end. And he is an absolute menace defensively. Obviously, he's been a huge boon to them. Isaiah, we mentioned the big block that he had in that game, which to me still remains, the turning point of that game where you really needed it. I love Isaiah Abraham. I think he is everything that you need out of a basketball player. I'm glad that he's getting the nod to start because I think I was concerned, where's his minutes going to come from? Turns out Cooley had that figured out already. He knew exactly what you need in that spot. And Isaiah is like the prototypical connector. Doesn't make mistakes offensively, takes on a big load defensively and doesn't make a ton of mistakes on that end either. Has great length and athleticism, so he can play up, he can guard down, just does everything that you want and is a just fundamentally really good basketball player. I'm excited to see his shooting develop as well. He hit that step back too against Clemson. He had another 3 that looked really good. It just sort of rimmed out. I think as he gets more reps and opportunities, he can actually develop as a shooter. It's not going to be this year necessarily, but hopefully you retain him and over the summer he gets the opportunity to work on really focus on the shooting, because that's the next thing for him. And I think he can do it. He's kind of got a line drive sort of shot, but I think he's got the efficient motion that you'd like to see. And I just would not bet on Isaiah Abraham at all for anything. Obviously, Deshaun Harris-Smith has been big. He was big in the Clemson game. He's going to be, I think, one of the key guys with Vince going down. You're going to look to see for them to play those sort of the triple front court threat of Caleb, Isaiah, and Deshaun, and have them pass bigs off, play in that zone a little bit. He's a really, really important rebounder for this team, averaging 6 points per game, but his ability to help the team out and gang rebound has been really, really crucial. And it's, they are complementary pieces. Question of like, what does the game need? You can find an answer for it. Now that's going to be tested without Vince, but I think that they have shown that the floor is really high for these guys, and I'm waiting to see who's going to pop next, who's going to have a breakout offensive game, who's going to go out and take the game from Dayton. I think there's a lot to really like about this team. Last thing I want to just touch on, we talked a little bit about the discipline of this team, their ability to not turn the ball over, again, 7th in turnover rate. I keep saying that because it's kind of remarkable for a Georgetown team. It's just not something we've seen in a while. Going back here, last year they were 173rd in turnover rate. The year before they were 239th, one of the worst turnover rate teams in the country. Patrick Ewing's last year, they were 123rd in the country. Before that, 211th. Before that, 190th. I mean, you just go back, and this team is in the 100 or 200 range. Let me see. All the way back to John Thompson's tenure, John Thompson III. I think the last time they're in the positive here is 77th in, 179th. Going back, they've just turned the ball over a lot over the years. Now you're sitting 7th. That's just frankly remarkable. I would expect that to kind of normalize a little bit. I would expect them to have some higher turnover games, particularly as they get into conference play against some teams that apply a lot of pressure. But guys like KJ and Malik have shown that they can handle the ball. You've got Jeremiah, who one of the things he does really well is handle pressure, handle the ball as your secondary ball handler, your backup point guard. He's been great. So I wouldn't be shocked if that number, the turnover rate, goes up a little bit, but I think that they just are a really, really clean and efficient basketball team. And a lot of that has to do with Ed Cooley and the staff's preparation of this team. I've said it a lot, but I think it's just worth noting that Cooley is really nailing preparation, the rotations, who he's going to, and when. They play smart basketball. They get into really good sets for the most part. There was a little bit of stickiness in the offensive side against Clemson, but they corrected that and got exactly what they needed out of the team. They get to the line a lot, which is critical for a team that is not a great shooting team, which they're just not going to be. We're not going to see them pop on the offensive end from a shooting perspective. Maybe Gabriel Landera, the Brazilian, who's coming in, hopefully, don't know for sure, but hopefully in the second semester in 2026, he provide a little bit of shooting. No clue if he's going to play or how much he's going to play, but they're just not going to be a great shooting team at all this year. But they get to the line, they don't turn the ball over, they generate turnovers pretty efficiently, and they are just really effective defensively, a staple of Cooley teams. And one of the things that I always look for, I've mentioned this on pods before, but what are the types of kind of opening sets that they're running when a coach has the ability to call a particular play or set something up? How good is he at drawing that up, and how effective is the team at doing that? And they are really efficient at setting up effective sets and making, those plays that they're able to call are working. We noted the opening set against Clemson, noted against Maryland, how they came out of half. they have been really, really good in the moments where coaching is on display. And I think that is a real credit to Cooley and his staff that have a great feel for this team, and they're just really good. I mean, we said this with Jake on the last pod, but Cooley's just a really, really good basketball coach. I know that shouldn't be a surprise, and I'm not saying it is necessarily, but he has really, really been in his bag, I think, so far this year, and he's going to need to be even more with Vince out. There's going to be some challenges over the next couple of weeks, but I feel really confident with where this team is and with where Cooley has them and how they're playing. I think there's a lot that they need to do to find their way into the tournament, but they are not playing like a bubble team right now. They're playing like a tournament team. I fundamentally believe that. That's based off of the competition that they're playing, which, again, through 4 games, 2 of them are high major opponents. I would say probably one of those high major opponents and one of the teams that they've played so far in the regular season is a tournament team. But Kentucky, despite challenges and struggles so far this year, they would factor into the tournament for sure. GW has been good so far this year and look like they're going to really put some pressure on in the A10. And Georgetown has prevailed in all of those games. So this is a team playing like they're the better team in the moments that matter. And I think that is setting themselves up for success for sure. And I'm excited to see over the next week or two how they stabilize without Vince, how Julius is able to carry the load, and who is coming up behind, whether it's Seal, whether it's the platooning, whether it's Jake Foote, who plays up in that small ball 5 position. But they're going to need to get some help. But I feel about as confident as I could that they can survive that because of how well that they're playing and how good of a basketball this team is. That's where I'll leave it. It's a good basketball team. Enjoy it. Enjoy watching them because it's fun right now. It's just great to see. That'll do it. As I said, you can check out all the specific numbers that I mentioned on this pod on the Finger WAG site. There's a story up right now that goes through all of this. We also have game shots from the Clemson game. Our official, we'll call it official, our official Finger WAG photographer, Daniel, was there capturing shots from the game. We've got those up on the website now. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter, X, and Instagram now to get all of the latest content from us. As I said, we'll be a little light on the pod over the next week or two as I'm out of town, but you'll get coverage on social for sure. Hopefully we have some boots on the ground coverage from Orlando, and look for us to get back on the pod to talk about how Georgetown does in that multi-team event in Orlando, hopefully beating Dayton and giving a good run, if not beating BYU. I'm excited, hopefully, to see, knock on wood, KJ Lewis match up with AJ Debinsa, who has looked really good, but I think Georgetown's a tougher team than BYU. You got to get through Dayton first. Don't want to look past that. But if you do, that's a really fun matchup of a team that clashing styles for sure, to see who can really enforce their will on the opponent. We'll have all the coverage. As always, follow us. Check us out on thefingerwag.com and Hoya Saxa.